Welcome to Treble the Trouble with your hosts, crochet designers Faye, Helen, and Vicky.
Thank you for joining us for part 2 of Treble the Trouble with pattern reading. We published part 1 in March 2021 and this is part 2. We have plenty of content that made us run over what would be our usual running time. So sit back, grab yourself a cup of tea and join us for the second half of Treble the Trouble with pattern reading.
There is another way of patterns being written, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Charts.
So we've mentioned this. Did we mention this book last week? Not last week, last month. The 100 crochet stitches, the harmony guide.
So yes, so the harmony guides for crochet stitches are really useful, and both Helen and I would recommend the books to every beginner because it gives you written pattern on a whole variety of different stitches and stitch combinations. You've got the written pattern, you have the photograph swatch so you can see what it looks like, but you also have a crochet chart with it as well. Now the great thing about the crochet charts are that those the diagrams for the stitches are universal. So these stitches recognizable the world over. We have a different name for them. So this treble cluster here, an American would call that a double crochet cluster. But the symbol is universal. The harmony guides are great because you're learning the symbols at the same time as following the written pattern.
I've obviously got the other one somewhere or other because I've been using it, but it's not on the bookshelf. So this is the second one, and this is hundreds more crochet stitches. Right. There's a green one which just says their harmony guides to crochet stitches. Faye's got the green one, and I've
not
got the
seen
green
these. I've never seen these.
Brilliant. They were 1986-ish.
That one is the green one's the first one. This one is the second one. We will give you some more information about these. You can only buy them from secondhand places, eBay or whatever, because they don't print them anymore. There has been, right, this is 1992.
Okay.
There have been some different versions. I didn't find them as good. They renewed them. There are a couple of things. Basically, these were edited by Sylvia Kosh and James Walters. Now, to me, they are like the Mary Quant of crochet.
Okay.
Right. They're just, I have pretty much all their books because they are amazing. But each pattern gives you a decent close-up of the stitch. You then have written text, and underneath you have a stitch diagram. Now, as Faye was saying, your stitch diagrams, your symbols are international. It doesn't matter what they call the stitch, the same symbol is used for it the world over. Right?
Okay.
In Dutch, I can't remember which one's which, but you've got a stokje. I think it's a treble, right? But the symbol's still the same.
Okay.
And there are some pretty amazing books out that I cannot read a word of. I don't know whether you can get these over here. I do know she's got a new one out and I'm trying to work out how to get it because they're for sale on Amazon Japan, but you need a Japanese address to be able to register with them.
Oh my word. Wow.
Let me just find you. some written instructions, okay?
You'll love it.
This is where the fun comes in.
No.
But that's written crochet instructions.
But then next to it,
Oh, they've got the universal diagram, so it's fine.
Yes.
so I can make anything out of these two books, even though I can't understand a word of them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And once you get them, once you understand them, there's another book which is actually at the shop, so I can't show you. There's one, is it Jan Eaton's 200 crochet blocks? Some of those have chart symbols in them as well. And once you start learning them, they are really easy. We downloaded a pattern from, it was an American site. It was for one of my students. We were looking for a blanket pattern for her. And of course, all American terms. She hasn't learned American terms. But then there's the stitch pattern underneath. So she doesn't need to worry about the American terms. She just needs to understand the stitch pattern.
Yeah.
And complicated patterns, you can use both together.
Okay.
So if you've got a complicated pattern and you can't quite understand one or the other, you can read the pattern and then you can compare it with the stitch pattern and suddenly, that's how it works.
Okay.
But stitch patterns are really worth having a go at because they are really easy. Once you understand them, they are really easy. Basically,
I've never looked at them because I found them frightening. It was like reading Japanese, although it isn't. And I just didn't understand them. So I just stayed away from them. I didn't realise at all that they were universal across the world. I never realised that at all. I just thought it was, the pattern writers cheating and not wanting to write things out.
Okay, so here's the truth, okay? It's actually harder to write one of those than it is to write a text pattern.
Okay, sorry. I thought, oh, they can't be bothered to write it out, so they just put a little pattern there. So that's just my beginner naivety.
It's
So
easy enough to
glad.
write it in rows, like, but because it's a lot of it starts in the motifs. You start in the dead center, don't you, and you work your way out. But I know when I've had students that struggle with the written word, we've used the chart symbols, taught her the chart symbols, and we just translate the written into a row of symbols, and she was finding that a lot easier to follow.
It is quite easy to do it when you're actually doing the pattern and you write it out. I mean, I had one that I got a set of coloured felt pens, and if she was having difficulty, I would draw out, not strictly following a proper stitch diagram, not usually just lines for the stitches, but I would put that out and each row would be a different colour.
Okay.
And that was easier for her to follow, and then she could understand the written one once it was drawn out for her.
Okay.
But to actually use all those symbols and things and put it on the computer, unless you've got a proper program to do it and you spend time learning to use that program properly, it's a lot easier to write it in text.
Okay. I stand corrected.
But I can understand your logic and the way you arrived at that thought does make sense, because I had those same thoughts when I first came back to crochet, and it was like,
okay,
yeah, so you're not alone in that thinking.
Okay.
Do you subscribe to any crochet magazines?
No, not yet. I say not yet, only because I wasn't sure whether I'd like it or not. I really do like crochet, and I'm mindful not to subscribe to too many magazines at the moment. How many different types of crochet magazines are out there at the moment?
Right,
A few.
UK only
Mm.
4 as far as I know.
okay.
Inside Crochet, Simply Crochet, Crochet Now, and Let's Knit and Crochet.
And what would be the best one for a beginner?
Simply Crochet.
Simply.
Simply Crochet.
This is the latest one.
And is
I'm
that
just-
monthly or weekly?
Monthly.
Monthly.
Okay.
I think they're all monthly.
Yeah.
Okay.
It started off with just Inside Crochet. It was the only crochet magazine. And then it came out with, it used to be bi-monthly, then it came out monthly, and then Simply Crochet started.
Okay.
Now, I have to admit, Simply Crochet is not my favourite one because it's too easy. Right?
I like it because it's easy and it's a great one to recommend to beginners.
Well, it might
Well,
suit
yeah.
me then.
It is. There's no stitch diagrams in here, typical.
No.
Inside Crochet does. I don't know whether I've got a copy of that there.
Not for all of them. It depends on the pattern and the designer. You
Yes.
don't get a stitch diagram every time, but occasionally you will see stitch diagrams in those two magazines.
Okay.
Yeah. I know that my Aran poncho had a stitch diagram in it. I didn't write it. It was tech edited by a Canadian. He's a designer, but he doesn't just design crochet. He does a lot of different things.
Okay.
He was tech editor for Inside Crochet for a while. He did my bed runner, and I think he did my Aran poncho.
So I've noticed with quite a few of your patterns, Helen, that one of the ways that you help beginner pattern readers is by creating photographic tutorials within your patterns.
Yeah, I'm not very good with videos and things. I don't like going down that line. I particularly hate YouTube.
Why is
But
that?
YouTube there's a lot of amateurs on there for a start, and they don't explain things properly. There's also, it's 95% American, which means that when you're teaching British crocheters, they're learning all the wrong terms. But my biggest bugbear about it is the fact that people who learn from YouTube videos do not know how to read patterns. They never learn how to read written patterns, and you present them with a written pattern and they just say, oh, I can't do that. I'm not doing that one. Where's the video?
Yeah, and I've actually taken that kind of one step further, because I have had students come to me who have learned to crochet by copying YouTube video patterns, and I've actually gone and looked at some of those video patterns, and there is absolutely no pattern annotations within the video at all. It is literally, you are copying what, you know, the motions that the hands are making in the video. So like Helen says, they're not learning to read patterns. I've then taken that one step further, because like Helen, I believe that if you can follow a pattern, it opens up a whole new world for you in crochet, and specifically chart symbols. It just opens up even more. So I've started creating video patterns for YouTube. Okay, I know you don't like that plan, Helen, but however, I am so well aware of how much you can learn from YouTube, and when you want to learn something new, it doesn't matter what it is, your first go-to is either Google or YouTube. That was everyone's first port of call. So I've started doing my pattern annotations on the videos.
That may be the modern first port of call.
Yeah.
Right. My first port of call was always the library.
as a beginner, I think both come together quite well to support a beginner. So you may not be able to read a pattern brilliantly, but you can get tips and hints off YouTube. Also, if you wanted to do something small and quick, I think when I wanted to do skulls, I think I went to YouTube, because I'm only going to make them for Halloween. It's only a tiny thing that takes 10 minutes, and I just made one from YouTube.
Yeah.
And also, I just think the two marry together. But the worst thing I think about YouTube patterns and demonstrations is some people are incredibly boring, and they spend a long time. You can spend a long time just watching hands move without actually crocheting. So I do feel that people need to move it on.
I'm afraid I have watched YouTube videos to learn how to do stuff, okay, but I haven't. It's been a supplement to what I already know.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So, for example, I know how to do Tunisian crochet. I know how to do most of the stitches, right? I couldn't find something that explained how to do a cable. I ended up watching a video to do it. I have to admit, I skipped through half of it. I was just fast forwarding and what have you, and I do tend to watch them with the sound off as well, because some of their voices really
mine included.
So yes, they are okay as long as they're used properly, but if you're trying to learn from a video, you can't go back and read a pattern. Whereas if you learn from a pattern, so as we were saying, I don't do videos, but I take a lot of photos. And in something like Treasure Island, where there's different techniques, although if it was just a written pattern, it would probably be sort of intermediate to advanced, it is suitable for beginners because of all the photos I've put in it. And the really difficult bits have lots of photo steps in them.
Yeah.
Those that know what they're doing can just pass that bit and go on to the next bit. But learning to read patterns first, and then supplementing it with with things on YouTube, right? That's not too bad. But learning to crochet on YouTube, you can't go back and learn to read patterns. You don't know how to do it. And with Secret Garden, we had a lot of problems, didn't we?
We did. There were a lot of people who'd only ever used YouTube for patterns, and they openly admitted they can copy what's happening on a screen, but you give them a written pattern. Even with the photo tutorial, they just couldn't get it. And we were having to do Facebook Lives where I was explaining how to take the written bit and make it. But one of the things that I did with that was I told everyone to have the pattern in front of them. We are looking at this row. This is what it says in the shorthand. Then explain what it is in longhand. So rather than saying DC, it was double crochet, and explaining it bit by bit, and then showing them how to do it. So I was trying to do it in a way that they were reading the pattern as well as making. And going back to the patterns that I've been doing for YouTube, I'm doing it in the same way, and the written pattern is actually on the screen as I'm working and as I'm speaking, and I'm repeating what the written pattern is. And the way I see it is it's there subliminally. So even if they're just looking at the hands, their peripheral vision is still seeing that written pattern.
Okay.
If they're copying it often enough, they will subconsciously that'll be going in. So when they do come to read a pattern or see a pattern, some of it should make sense.
Okay.
Faye is actually doing some videos for Treasure Island, but they're not, you can't follow the videos to do the pattern.
They're supplementing the pattern.
Yeah.
They're supplementing the pattern. We're going to see how it all works together. You know, we'll get some feedback at the end of it and see what people thought of it, because this time there are some new people on there, but there are also some of my diehard fans.
Yeah, I have seen a few names from the other crochet alongs.
And yeah, I mean, I've got some of my students on there as well, because of course they have the advantage over you in that because they're local, they've seen the blanket actually coming together and they know what the bits and pieces look like.
Except for the bit with the button. Because even I don't know what that bit
Remind
is.
me again what the bit with the button is about.
Nice try.
Yeah, I mean, go back to the videos and stuff. There is a whole world out there other than just what you're seeing on YouTube, and we would love for people to actually take the time to learn to read patterns or learn to follow charts, because it just opened their eyes, wouldn't it, Helen?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to these Japanese books a minute, she uses such a fine needle and thread to do these, but
They look like real flowers.
they do. They're absolutely amazing. Her work is absolutely beautiful. As I said, she's got a new book out, and I am trying to work out how to get it. She's known as Luna Heavenly, but yeah, her work is amazing. It's also microscopic. But I just love looking at the books. Every so often, I just get them out to look at the pictures.
One of the resources that I've been creating for Treble the Trouble is actually the chart symbols with UK terminology, which are being shared on our Instagram and on our Facebook page. I've set up a photo album on Facebook page and a highlights album on the Instagram page, with some slides with the different stitch symbols on, just so that we can help people start learning what those stitch symbols mean. And it's just another tool in your tool belt, really.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that we've talked about tonight, I actually have a web page that has all that information about the brackets and the stars and everything else on the web page.
That link will also be below. Any questions, Sylvia? Have we missed anything? As a beginner, is there anything else?
No, you haven't. You've covered everything that most beginners look for, I think. I think also it would be really helpful to explain, one thing, hook size to beginners and why you need a particular hook size.
Well, in that case, you need to go back and watch Treble the Trouble with Yarn, episode 1, because that was actually, there was quite a good chunk of the video was about yarns and hook sizes and which ones relate to which.
There's also photographs that we did where I tied some yarn around and laid the hooks next to them, just to give you an idea of the different.
An idea, yeah.
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
And they're on our Instagram and our Facebook, and they were in the video.
Thank you.
So now we know that one of our tier 2 patrons hasn't been taking advantage of the early release of the videos.
Your tier 2 patrons just too busy sometimes to do it all. I'm
But we
really sorry.
appreciate you anyway. We appreciate your contribution, and it's been fantastic.
I'm sure she will be taking advantage of the early release of this one to see what she looks like before everybody else does.
I won't unless you tell me what the button's for. Not doing it. And also, I want a pattern for a not for a parrot, for a pirate to go with the blanket.
We'll see.
little pirate with his hook, same colours. No pressure. Hat.
There
And
is.
similar button to whatever that button's been used for.
Thanks to everybody for putting up with all of our waffle tonight. Next time we have Amanda from Itchy Crochet, who is going to be our guest designer.
Thank you, Sylvia, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. So if you've enjoyed this, please do consider joining us on Patreon. I'll put the links in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. That tells us that you like it. You can subscribe to the channel as well. When you click subscribe, click the bell as well so that you get notifications of new uploads. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you, and good night to you, Helen and Sylvia.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. This video has been made possible thanks to Unravel and Unwind Patreon supporters. You too can become a patron for as little as £3.60 a month. To subscribe, visit www.patreon.com/Unravel and Unwind.